Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kevin Dex, and I'm introducing myself today, despite the fact that I've never done that before, because since my last video, my subscriber count has been going up pretty drastically. When I posted my last video, I had around 4 subscribers, and right now I'm well over 100. So I just wanted to say hey to everyone who's joined since that video, and welcome you guys to my channel. And speaking of that last video, the video where we dove into the potential secrets that the Undertale snowman might be holding, I was thinking about something else the whole time. A different quote-unquote man from Undertale and Deltarune that warrants their own video. And that's the Everyman. Now, for those who don't know who the Everyman is, join the rest of us because pretty much none of us know who this guy is. Everyman is a recurring character that has been periodically popping up from time to time over the course of Undertale and Deltarune's entire campaigns so far. And we're all just left wondering, who is this guy? What does he want? Where did he come from? What does it mean when he appears? I don't really know. And so what I want to do today is I want to look at the evidence. I want to look at the appearance of Everyman in-game, where he appears, when he appears, why it might be significant, and see if we could piece together, or at least begin to piece together, a cohesive narrative that might give us a little bit of a better idea of just who this guy is. And so before we get into it, I think I want to start with a little bit of an overview of just what this guy looks like. And it shouldn't take too long because, as you can see, he's not very detailed. He's very clearly a humanoid creature, standing on 2 legs with 2 arms and a torso, and a neck that leads up to a head. Now, where he departs from a typical humanoid figure is the beak-like protrusion that is coming out of his face, and how generally amorphous his body is, looking more like an amalgamate than anything else. But his appearance is fairly consistent, and so we can kind of take this appearance to be like the established, this is what Everyman looks like. No matter what game we're in, no matter where he appears, he is always going to take on this appearance right here. Okay, everyone caught up? Everyone knows who this guy is? Or at least is familiar enough with him for me to dive into the video? Good. Let's talk about the first appearance of Everyman. And arguably, not even arguably, this is the most prominent appearance of Everyman that we have thus far. So, in the True Lab in Undertale, you can encounter an amalgamate known as Reaper Bird. And one of Reaper Bird's attacks might be the most disturbing attack that we see in all of Undertale or Deltarune. And it starts off with Everyman in the appearance that we are familiar with, just kind of standing there, seemingly minding his own business. And then all of a sudden, a swarm of butterflies, or what we assume to be butterflies, I suppose they could be moths, but butterflies come down from outside of the box where you're battling in, and they start to swarm around Everyman's head. And I think that that's really interesting, because it's very clear, it's immediately obvious, and I'll be putting all these pictures on screen as I talk about them, but it's immediately obvious when you're looking at this that he is in pain. As soon as the butterflies start to swarm around his head, he starts to writhe in pain. His arms shoot up. He's very clearly suffering. And then as the animation goes on, he's in so much pain that he actually falls to his knees. That is highly disturbing. That it almost makes you feel bad for the Everyman, that in this moment he's in so much pain from these butterflies that he's collapsing. But that's not even the most disturbing part of this, as the attack just kind of ends right there. There's not really any threat to the player if you just stand entirely still during this attack. The Everyman is the one getting attacked. And yet, on the turn after, we see the Everyman again, once again being swarmed by butterflies, and yet this time he doesn't seem to be in pain. In fact, he seems to be walking towards the player and shooting butterflies towards the player as projectiles. Now, whether this is the Everyman controlling the butterflies or the butterflies controlling the Everyman, that is up for debate. I think if I had to guess, I would say that it is the butterflies who are controlling Everyman. I think that Toby was very purposeful in showing the butterflies come down and swarm the head of the Everyman, showing that, like, they are hurting him. They are causing him extreme pain. And after that, they take over Everyman and they start controlling him. The pain is gone. He's not in pain anymore. And it's because he's not in control. The butterflies are. And so, okay, if we accept the idea that the butterflies are controlling Everyman in this instance and not the other way around, we could take that a step further and say, okay, well, the butterflies are typically part of Whimsalot's attacks. Whimsalot being one of the monsters who was incorporated into the amalgamation that is the Reaper Bird. And Whimsalot is a butterfly-like creature. And so if it's their attack and they're part of the Reaper Bird, it can be assumed that they are the one in control. The butterflies are the ones in control in this attack. And Everyman is either some kind of victim or is representing the other monsters that are part of the amalgamation. And that, I think, is what the intention behind this was, is it's showing what an amalgamation between multiple different monsters can be like. So, like, let me check here. So Reaper Bird is a combination of Final Frogget, Whimsalot, and Astigmatism. And I think Everyman in this instance is supposed to represent Final Frogget and Astigmatism. And Whimsalot, their butterflies being the prominent attack and having it take over Everyman, is supposed to show that Whimsalot is the strongest monster in this amalgamation and is in control, and that Final Frogget and Astigmatism might be suffering because of this. I think that this part of the theory is inherently making some assumptions about the way amalgamations work. I think the assumption I'm making here is that if one monster is either capable of holding more determination or naturally has more determination than the other monsters in the amalgamation, then they would be the dominant monster. And the other monsters would go the way of Everyman here, where they are more subdued, they're more buried, they're being controlled. It's a tortured experience, a tortured living, because they're alive, but they're not really in control. And I think all the monsters in an amalgamation are in control to some extent, as throughout Undertale, when we see the amalgamations, they do exhibit traits and dialogue and attacks of all the monsters that are in their makeup. But here, I do think that the theory that Everyman is a representation of the other monsters within the amalgamation, I think that's hitting the nail on the head for this interpretation. Now, the next interpretation, or rather the next instance of Everyman, is, believe it or not until Deltarune. So, this one off character that was used in the attack for one battle is now a recurring symbol. And the first time we see him is during the Jevil fight. Now, I'm going to be honest, this one kind of has me a bit at a loss for words. I think that Jevil, obviously being a secret boss, having the, freedom leitmotif, having every man there, could be just a reference to monsters who have wanted freedom in the past in Undertale or something else, but I really don't know what his appearance here signifies. And that goes for a lot of Everyman's Deltarune appearances. Sometimes he just kind of pops up out of nowhere. And that's also uh, true for his hometown appearance. If you go into the alleyway in Hometown, you can actually see Everyman graffiti in pink paint on the wall at the end of the alleyway. That is really weird. And I think that most importantly, it tells us that not only is Everyman, real in Undertale as part of an attack, but he's really real. Like he's real beyond the attack of Reaper Bird. Someone in Hometown knows about Everyman, knows what he looks like, and thinks he's important enough or likes him enough to draw him on the wall next to Icy E, one of the most prominent mascots in the world of Deltarune, right next to Everyman. That has to mean something, and I think it does. And when we're done looking at the rest of the appearances of Everyman in Deltarune, I think I'm going to share the conclusion that I'm starting to come to on just who this guy is. So next up, we have Pop-Up's attack. Pop-Up's attack from Chapter 2 of Deltarune, where during the attack where Pop-Up flashes a bunch of advertisements, a little window with Everyman's head can be seen. Another strange appearance. Pop-Up is basically just a random Darkner. There's really no significance to this Darkner other than just being a fun enemy to encounter in the cyber world. And speaking of more encounters in the cyber world, Everyman also appears as one of Queen's attacks during the attack where a bunch of little icons are scrolling up and down and shooting out words at you. Everyman is one of those characters. And you know what's particularly strange about Everyman's appearance in the Queen battle is every other image in that attack, it shoots out words. Everyman does not. Everyman just scrolls by without saying a single word. And I think that that's very significant. Now, those are all of the appearances in-game. To my knowledge, that little picture of Everyman was also used during the Spamton sweepstakes as a donation image. All of the images from Queen's attacks, to my knowledge, were used during the Spamton sweepstakes, so I don't want to cover that too much, because Toby might have just been using those icons, or those icons were used from that. Who knows what Toby's plans were. We can't read that guy's mind. But I think I have an idea of just who Everyman is. I don't think Everyman is a real character. I know that there was a while where people were genuinely throwing around the idea that Everyman might be the Knight. Well, no, I don't think Everyman is the night or tied to the night. We've seen the night. But I think Everyman represents every man. And I don't think that this is a unique theory. I think that a lot of people have probably come to this conclusion, but it's the idea that all the monsters in the amalgamation are represented by the Everyman, and the appearance of Everyman as graffiti that really seals the deal for me. I think that Everyman is meant to just be a symbol for every single monster. Like, if you want to use a symbol to represent monster kind, or like in a political cartoon, let's say, you would use Everyman. And I think that's how it would go. But there is something a little bit deeper that just doesn't rub me the right way, and it goes back to that Reaper Bird attack. Now, I'm fine with the conclusion that in this attack, Everyman represents astigmatism and final frogget, and the torture that they're being put through being combined with Whimsalot, and it being a little message to the player that being an amalgamation is painful. But I think it's more than that. I think that Everyman is meant to parallel the physical appearance of an amalgamation. And the reason I think that is, going back to the butterfly attack, what if we look at that literally? And we look at butterflies in the real world and their behavior. And this is where I get into the real fun part of the theory. This is where I start to have a good time. So butterflies in the real world, sometimes there's a behavior that butterflies will exhibit where they will land on another animal and they will start drinking the tears from their eyes. And they do this because obviously salt and water are integral to animals. You need sodium, you need water to live for the most part. I'm sure there's some animals out there that don't need sodium or something. But I think, blood is heavy in sodium, water. So if you have blood, typically you need those things. And that includes butterflies. So what if we look at it from the real life perspective of Everyman being some kind of amalgamation where he just has this orifice on his face that is meant to represent an eye or a mouth or whatever, similar to the dog amalgamation, where they have this hole on their face where it's confirmed that liquid comes out of it, but it's more so hinted to be a mouth. So what if that was an eye, and the hole was big enough for butterflies to all fly into it and drink the tears or the liquid from inside the head of the Everyman? That is some horrifying imagery. But it makes me wonder, like, if that is the interpretation, and Everyman is not just a symbol that should represent all monsters, what if Everyman actually is a literal amalgamation, a combination of monsters, and they've developed some crazy eye hole that they cry out of because they're in pain? I know that this is like taking it much further than I initially anticipated, but I start to have fun when I start to take these theories pretty far. I don't know about you guys, but even though this is not a perfect, theory or analysis of a character, I think that there's gotta be some stuff here that we as a community can pull out and put together to form a more complete image of who this character is. And so I want to ask all of you to help me out and tell me either what I missed or what you guys think I hit on. I'm looking forward, just as always, to reading your guys' comments and seeing what you have to say. I also, just again, at the end of this video, I want to wish Undertale a happy 10th anniversary. It's been a pleasure playing these games, Undertale and Deltarune, and such a pleasure making videos for these communities that I've been a part of for so long. And I just want to wish all of you guys a wonderful day, and let you know that I'll catch you next time. So, yeah, have a great day and peace out.